Welcome to the Natural History Cupboard. Come on in.
And welcome back to the Natural History Cupboard podcast, the place where the weird and wonderful parts of the natural world come together. I'm your host, Gareth, and with me, as always, is my co-host, Aaron. Aaron, what have you been up to?
Well, apart from despairing for the world after
We'll
this
try
week's
not
events.
to focus on that. Yeah.
It's been not a too busy week. I am looking. I think we're going out for more walks really now.
It's a little bit warmer.
It's
Only a little.
Yeah, marginally warmer. On the lookout for some the first signs of spring. I know it's still a little way off.
Oh no! I've already seen daffodils.
Yeah.
There's daffodils out on the way to like Holsworthy and places like that in Bideford.
The annual "Who Can Spot a Fish First" competition in the family has well and truly started. I tell you what, actually, okay, I've got a long story of like wildlife that I've been trying to spot, but I'll ignore that for the sake of this instead. If you're ever in North Cornwall area, there is a small kind of bistro restaurant called The Weir.
Right.
It's just outside of Bude, and we went down to meet some of our family down there, which is wonderful in itself because I adore all of them. But what's particularly special about this place is it's got like there's like a lake.
Is there a weir by any chance?
Yeah, well, there was herons there.
Oh, nice.
Like two very big ones flying about. There's all kinds of other bird life, but which was really cool to see. And they have lots that are kind of resident there that we didn't see, such as kingfishers and stuff. But inside the actual restaurant, other than this like lovely fireplace that they've got on the walls, I've got photos, so I'll put them up. It's got information about the wildlife that you find here, and it's like nice. Zoo standard information. Like the signage is like zoo standard. It's really nice. Yeah. So that's probably the wildlife highlight of the week. So that's the Weir in Bude, just to shout them out for doing something positive for the wildlife in their area.
Cool. I don't think I've ever been there.
Good food.
Well, I mean, yeah. Well, I was also down in Cornwall as well, and was presumably on the weekend.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I was a bit further down actually. I was in Launceston.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I decided to go to a garden centre and skulk around and look for plants. So I went looking for another tea bush. No one seems to sell tea plants, so that may have to be an online thing. But in the meantime, I ended up buying some house plants, which it's an addiction house plant. So you just go, well, just one more, and another, just to keep it, keep them company. And
you don't want your house plant getting
lonely. They get lonely. You need to have them bunched up, have a little buddy for them and everything. Yeah. But no, what I've got in my kitchen is my large Exoterra tank.
Yeah.
But I've got loads of plants in it. So in like little plants in there, and then wait until they outgrow there, then cut them off, or put cuttings and then take the cuttings somewhere else, or put them at work and all sorts. But at the moment it's being slowly taken over by a pumpkin. So the end of last year, my son came home with some pumpkin seeds after sort of Halloween. The teachers had given them all pumpkin seeds, and I was like, we'll definitely grow it, thinking it's not going to grow. It's just, I thought, okay, we'll put it in the tank there, and if it grows, we'll put it outside next year, thinking it's not going to grow. It's not going to. Oh, it's growing. Okay, it's growing, and now it's actually started to sort of vine around a few things.
It's got a stranglehold on them.
It's got flowers on it, so there's a good chance I might have a pumpkin inside the kitchen.
You have to. You have to do the You have to like it's like a superstition around it, like the African gourd that Drew covered for
us. Well, luckily I can lock it, so it shouldn't be able to get out. Yeah. No, I'm hoping that when the time comes and the weather's better, I can transplant it outside. and hopefully, yeah, we'll have a pumpkin, later in the year. I've never grown a pumpkin before, actually.
I don't think we have. No, I don't think we have.
It's almost that time of the year where I start getting things ready for out in the garden, but as everything that happened over the winter with Storm Dara, we kind of don't have a greenhouse that's functional anymore. So that's the first thing to fix, which I haven't even attempted. But yeah,
fair enough.
Pretty cool. Yeah. Well, should we move into the news?
It's been a very Cornish week, but yeah, let's do it.
Jam first. Is that the right one?
Yes.
It's the news!
Okay, well, we're into this week's news. I'm going to start things off with, an interesting story. So this is from BBC News, and it's lonely sunfish in Japan gets cardboard human friends.
Oh, I saw this.
Yeah, this is actually kind of sweet, actually. Basically, the aquarium itself has had to close this area off for a while, and they found that the sunfish itself was actually getting physically ill because of the lack of human interaction. So there's often a thought that humans are more of an irritation in zoos and aquariums and things like that, but a lot of the time they actually do give something to the animals in their presence. And I certainly remember during COVID, and I think you do as well, that the animals did have different, everything was a bit different for them. There wasn't all of a sudden crowds of people looking at the animals and lots of different noise and everything. Everything became very quiet for a very long time. So what they did in this aquarium was quite unique, and it kind of shows that sunfish, bless them, aren't the brightest of fish in the world. They got pictures of people and just stuck them on the glass, and then also got some cardboard cutouts of bodies and even T-shirts and sort of hung them from them to make it look like there are people standing there, and his health improved.
That's so interesting. So my first article comes to us from the Telegraph, and lo and behold, the lynx saga continues. Because the SNP refusal to punish illegal releases of beavers encouraged lynx reintroduction, say farmers. Of course. Well, I told you it wouldn't take too long, but the NFU are already having their predictable snowflake meltdown over the lynx incident, blaming the random abandonment of 4 obviously uncared for pet lynx on the Scottish government for not taking a harder stand on beaver reintroduction. Again, NFU, STFU.
So my next one comes from The Guardian, and it's dream come true for Australian funnel web spider enthusiast after the discovery of a new species.
Yeah.
It's always nice when you've got someone who absolutely loves animals that a lot of people don't like. So the funnel web spider is quite famous for being incredibly potent in its venom. But the Newcastle funnel web spider last shared a common ancestor with the Sydney funnel web about 17 million years ago, experts say. So Kane Christensen's passion for these fantastically deadly spiders in some ways, he was one of the keepers at the Australian Reptile Park, which is just outside of Sydney. He's basically been working with these spiders for years and has essentially helped in the research that has now set these 2 species apart. And in fact, he's got the ultimate honor, which I know I'd love one day. He's had a brand new species named after him. So the funnel web spider as we know it, the Sydney funnel web, is Atrax robustus. However, at the moment, there is now a brand new species, Atrax christenensis, the funnel web spider that, well, basically has been named in his honor, which that's the ultimate honor. That's where I'd be happy. That'd be
very cool. So my next article comes to us from Cowboy State Daily, which is not one a source I've used nor even heard of before.
That's an interesting one.
But the article headline is 88-foot long bronze of Wyoming's famous Dippy the dinosaur goes up in London. So a very much missed familiar face has returned, sort of, to London. Many of us Brits know Dippy as the Diplodocus that greets us as we walk into the Natural
Should
History
be greeting
Museum.
us.
Yeah, it's been replaced. But that was actually my next thing.
Sorry.
He's been absent since 2017, and Brits will be pleased to see this new cast of Dippy in the Natural History Museum's gardens.
So my next one is master's student inspecting dinosaur fossil notices an irregularity and discovers a whole new species in the process. So it's new species all around. This has come from allthatisinteresting.com. So similar to your, what was it, Cowboy?
Cowboy State Daily, yeah.
There you go. Well, this is the news that Kyle Atkins Weltman discovered a new dinosaur species by basically looking through what they already have. This is the new species, Eoneophon infranalis, which was discovered whilst examining what was thought to be a specimen of Anzu Whalei fossils. Now, Anzu is otherwise known as the chicken from hell, which is a really interesting. Essentially, it's a type of Oviraptorosaur. So we mentioned last week Oviraptor. This is one that was right at the end of the Cretaceous period. But essentially, they noticed a lot of oddities in this fossil, and, well, they turned out to be a completely separate species. So it's now a brand new species of dinosaur.
So my final article comes to us from the Press and Journal. And the headline is, it's still the Lynx saga. The headline is, criminal gang could be behind release of lynx in Highlands, say experts. So, yeah, circling back to the Lynx saga again and again, this is something I kind of get to say I told you so about, because I kind of thought that this was the case. But conservationists and animal rights groups alike are suggesting that organised criminal trafficking of animals could be behind the recent incident. So once again, NFU, STFU, you
at this point that Aaron went into a full tirade about his particular feelings for the NFU. It was censored out for various reasons, and also for making sure that people's sensitive little ears don't get offended. We'll now try and return back the rest of the news segment.
Anti-wildlife pissants.
Yeah.
I have feelings. I have strong feelings.
I think we could probably agree on that.
So that is finally the end of the newsreel for this week. Hopefully next week there'll be less of the NFU being complete wastes of Earth.
So the main article, as we'll try and get into it now, that I have for you this week, it's the discovery and then the loss and then the rediscovery of a lost dinosaur.
Oh,
so we haven't really touched on this for the simple reason that I've been too afraid to touch Spinosaurus. That sounds wrong, I know. For the simple reason that the moment that I have it, talk about it, it will change. It's the continuously morphing dinosaur. But the most interesting thing about Spinosaurus is that it was pretty much lost for a very long time because it was essentially a victim of World War II.
Yeah, that's right.
So Ernst Stromer, who was the one who discovered a lot of the original material, had the fossils in the Berlin Museum.
So it's his fault.
He didn't. I'd like to point out he didn't agree with the Nazis, and he didn't want his fossils in the museum. However, he didn't really have much choice. So they were in the museum, and then, we basically turned up and bombed the heck out of Berlin, and the war ended, and blah, blah, blah. In the process of doing that, those fossils were destroyed. So we only have some of the original drawings and notes and photos of those bits that allow us to know what Stromer found when he found them all those years ago. Well, new evidence has come out that not only did that particular dinosaur get set back, and thankfully we were able to find new specimens of Spinosaurus, otherwise it would still be far more of a mystery than it is today. I'm not saying that it's, a massively solved problem, but German researchers have unearthed documents on a new dinosaur species thought to have been destroyed during World War II as well. Now, this is a new species of large predatory dinosaur that roamed what seems to be the collection of giant predatory dinosaurs. The one place in the world you would not want to go and visit, for the simple reason there are giant predatory dinosaurs everywhere, and that is North Africa during the Cretaceous period, about 95 to 80 million years ago.
Right, yeah.
Nearly 80 years after these specimens have been essentially obliterated during World War II bombing raids, German researchers have stumbled upon previously unknown photos of these lost fossils, and enabling them to reevaluate what they originally classified as a Carcharodontosaurus to be a completely new species, they reckon. And they've identified this new species and called it Teemill markgraffi. So this wasn't found by Stromer, but it was found in various expeditions during 1914 to, well, Egypt and similar areas to where Stromer was. There were a lot of scientists at this point exploring different parts of Africa, and the Germans really did focus heavily on North Africa. So Austrian fossil collector Richard Margraf, who the species is named after, unearthed the remains of a massive dinosaur in Egypt's Bahari Oasis, and essentially the fossils were shipped to Munich, where Stromer, so he does get involved in this, and von Reichenbach studied them extensively. And in 1931, Stromer actually identified the specimens as Carcharodontosaurids.
Right, yeah.
Or actually put them down as Carcharodontosaurus himself. So they basically, that sort of got filed with the rest, really. And I suppose in a lot of ways, that kind of dooms it to sort of, well, it's in with the Carcharodontosaurus bits.
This actually happens quite commonly, doesn't it, with dinosaurs? Well, prehistoric animals.
However, the story takes a tragic turn in, obviously, 1944, when during World War II, an Allied bombing raid in Munich, the old academy, which was home to Stromer's collection, was destroyed. So I was wrong, sorry. I completely confused it with Berlin, where his collection was. The fossils were lost in the ensuing fire, and for decades, all that remained were basically detailed notes, sketches, and some very, very few photographs. Nearly a century later, we basically see that whilst conducting research, Maximilian Kellerman, a master's student at the University of Munich, stumbled upon forgotten sets of photographs in an archive and essentially took a look at these and realized that the original skeleton in the photos, including portions of a skull, a bit of spine, and a hind leg preserved before the destruction, seem to be somewhat different to what Carcharodontosaurus should have. Now, I'm showing you the photo, Aaron, now that you can see it. There's not very much there at all. No. That's the entirety of what we have of this dinosaur.
Wow.
So it is basically a leg bone, some bits of the front of the skull, and a bit of vertebra. So not very much at all. But that was enough for Kleinman to basically share this information and essentially make the groundbreaking discovery that this Egyptian dinosaur was not Carcharodontosaurus. Instead, it belonged to an entirely new species, Temeroraptor. And the name itself honors, obviously, Margraf, who was the person who found them, but also the Egyptian term Temeri, meaning beloved land. So it is the beloved land hunter. No, beloved land thief.
Yeah.
So the researchers believe that the predator was obviously roaming during the Cretaceous period at the same time as Carcharodontosaurus, Spinosaurus. I believe you've also got Rugops. There are Sarcosuchus, which is obviously a crocodile-like animal, but this is not a place you want to be in the water or on the land.
This is the kill zone.
Yeah,
the kill box.
To be honest, in some ways, those animals are so large they probably wouldn't even see you as food in some cases. So it was during the Cretaceous period, 66 to 145 million years ago, that you would have found this guy roaming around, probably eyeing you up. It was about 10 meters in length and would basically have had teeth for slicing through flesh. Its teeth show the features of the fact that it is in itself a Carcharodontosaurid, but not Carcharodontosaurus. So they were flat, blade-like teeth with serrations for cutting and slicing through prey. So a really cool dinosaur that has basically come up from studying historical evidence and looking back through old photos and things. And if anything, I would really love to sit and go through some like archives in a museum and see what's there and what was there and that.
Yeah, see if we can find a species to describe ourselves.
That's what I mean. Yeah. Where's I could then get my own one. But that's really cool. And it does make me want to do Spinosaurus more. It will happen. It will happen at some point. I'm terrified to do it for the simple reason, like I say, the moment I start talking about it, there'll be like an email alert or something. Spinosaurus, actually not a dinosaur. Turns out it was a giant rat that we'd just misidentified or something, or actually we made it up. There's no such thing. It was all a lie. But I don't know. So should we go from talking about a shark-toothed animal to an animal that also has some interesting teeth?
Yeah, we can take a bite out of it.
Oh.
It's the creature feature.
Right, we're into this week's creature feature. Aaron, what are we looking at?
Well, considering that I've covered all but one of the cats that we've shone a spotlight upon, I'm a little bit shocked that this is only the second Machairodont cat that I'm getting around to. But yes, as luck would have it, I get to cover our second Machairodont cat, like I said, the mighty Homotherium. And I'll definitely lean towards the European species. But I'll try to at least say something about the others. It's just that, there's a tiny bit of local bias going on, and the fact that
perfectly acceptable.
It's also the fact that the European species is actually the type species for the genus. So So anyway, Homotherium latidens, meaning same beast in Greek. So Homotherium, same beast, and wide tooth is the Latin latidens part. It would have been quite a sight during the Pliocene and Pleistocene times, like a large shadow lurking in the savanna grasslands of Europe. And it would have stood in at about 1.1 meters, and that's 3'7" at the shoulder for our American listeners, with a weight pushing 190 kilograms. This is closely rivaling African lions today, the second largest living cats around.
Yeah.
It's a big cat. And just like our lions, Homotherium was an efficient predator. And luckily, we actually know a fair bit about this chunky felid assassin. And that's mostly thanks to permafrost. You probably would have heard that term before. It's basically the solid walls of ice that you find often in like Siberia, places like that, where they're constantly digging out mummified remains of woolly mammoths and woolly rhinos, that type of thing. That's exactly where these guys have been found too, that in that kind of situation, and that's why we're able to know so much about them. So it actually gives us a lot of information as we find them and thaw them out, because they're in pretty good condition. Researchers have actually been able to analyze the cat's genes in this case, which is really cool. They tend to wear Levi's.
Oh, I knew that was coming.
Anyway,
keep the bad jokes for the end of the episode.
And these genes and everything that we've been able to kind of glean out of what we know from these remains actually tells the story of a cat which had genetics that are really interesting. Firstly, they have genetics that prefer the respiratory and circulatory systems quite heavily, and this aids them in long distance endurance. It means that they can take a lot of air in and get a lot of that efficient oxygen transfer going in the lungs and get it pumped around the body nice and fast. A little bit like the cheetahs that I spoke about last time. They also have genes that favor vision, and this is interesting because that actually tells us something about their life habits, because having eyesight, really good eyesight, excellent eyesight, is a kind of a trait that you associate with diurnal species. So we can kind of what's the word? We can kind of infer from that this was a diurnal animal. And also, though researchers are a little bit cautious about this one at the moment, they have genes that seem to relate to cognition that may possibly point towards a social lifestyle, maybe even cooperative hunting, which is another similarity that Homotherium appears to share with today's lions. Now, permafrost doesn't just preserve the genes of some species when we're lucky. It also preserves the animal in such a way that it allows us to see what it was like almost in its living state, so we can reimagine it in a much more accurate kind of picture. Maybe even see the animal, kind of imagine it in action. And we can see that it was built almost as like an intermediary between the Machairodonts and the big cats. Perhaps this was evolution trying to perfect its favorite family of predators. But if you look at Homotherium against something like a cousin such as Smilodon, you'll notice that Homotherium has longer leg muscles in comparison, without as much of the kind of muscle mass that's laid upon there. It also has proportionately smaller claws, and the shape of the back is different. It's a little bit more sloping, and
I tend to think of them a little bit like a caracal, like
they
scaled
do
up.
look a little bit like like a scaled up caracal. That's true. Yeah, they do look a bit like that. And these adaptations are kind of geared towards running. Maybe not, well, no, definitely not at the speed that cheetahs reach, because they're not built like that, but certainly maintaining a decent speed over long distance, not sprinting like a cheetah. Now, the obvious aim of this is being you outlasting your prey. Basically, these cats would have been exhausting them before taking them down, which is something that you see with things
Dogs,
like wolves, and certainly painted dogs are very good at that. There's also some dental differences to observe. So the scimitar teeth of the Homotherium are not quite as large as the saber-toothed Smilodons.
and this is where I must confess, I was going to bring in with us today my Homotherium replica tooth.
That would have been good.
However, here's a tip for you. Don't leave a reproduction fossil or any kind of fossil on the kitchen countertop.
Oh no!
When there is a 4-year-old around.
I thought that was where this is going.
Because you'll lose the tip of the tooth, as he apparently uses it in his, I don't know what machine he'd called it, but he kind of broke the end off. So
well, that would have been an interesting thing to bring in anyway, because Homotherium's teeth wouldn't have been all that strong. They would have been quite easily.
They certainly
broken.
don't stand up to a 4-year-old. So
certainly, that's a parallel that we can actually draw with Smilodon. Is that their teeth weren't that strong, but the incisors might have been, because the incisors were larger than they were in Smilodon and many others, and it looks like these took on the role of grasping prey as they were as the prey were dispatched, which is a job that is often associated with Smilodon's proportionately large forelimbs. Because again, Smilodon's elongated canines, as nasty as they look, are actually not all that strong. I mean, they're strong enough for me not to want to get bitten by one if it was around today, but still, they're not able to grapple with their teeth, and Homotherium would have been the same. We also have a fairly good idea, speaking about how they grasp prey, we have a fairly good idea of how they actually hunted. Again, the clues are in the body. The type of wear and tear on the dentition of recovered specimens is evidence of a species that consume particularly tough fleshed species. So you're talking about quite thick hide that they'd be cut through, and there are no instances of evidence on the teeth, that is, like wear and tear, for bone crushing, which you'd find like in things like hyenas. So we know that these guys only ate flesh. There are even more clues in trace fossils and den sites, and Spain is a particularly wonderful country for Homotherium trace fossils, and also evidence of Homotherium through other species such as fossilized humans. And we'll come back to that perhaps near the end, because actually this species is interesting for us for another reason. Remind me of that near the end. So Spain has been a great source of Homotherium dietary information. Specimens from southeast Spain dating to the early Pleistocene paint the picture of an apex predator, and here it would have shared its domain with other species of cat, such as the European jaguar and Meganterion, which is a close relative of Smilodon, actually, and it's another animal that should definitely be featured in one of these spotlights, because it's a very cool animal. Also, one thing I forgot to mention at the start of this creature feature when I was talking about Homotherium's appearance, but worth mentioning now because of Meganterion, is that both of these cats are really, really beautifully represented in paleo art that is featured in one of my favorite books, Fossil Cat, Big Cats and Their Fossil Relatives.
Brilliant.
The artwork in that book is incredible, but yeah, Homotherium looks awesome in it, and Meganterion as well looks really nice in it.
That was a book that I couldn't put down until cover to cover.
Yeah, really, really good.
I still haven't read the dog one.
It. No, that one came out later, and I don't have it, but I need to get it because I really enjoyed it. Very well written and very well illustrated.
In fact, I think you should go back far enough in the annals of us doing this when we did a look at different books. I think that one definitely featured.
Yeah, I would have thought it did. Yeah. So back to Homotherium, the creature feature, not Meganterion or a nice fossil book of long dead cats. But Homotherium would have hunted the plains, as I say, they're kind of a grass and savanna species.
They've been invented yet?
That was worse. That was worse than my earlier joke. But it still ended up. I tried to keep a straight face, but it still ended up cracking me in the end. Plains the grasslands, not plains the giant flying mechanical dragons. They would have predated upon bison, large horses, and young mammoths, whilst its cousins would have used the range a little bit differently, which would have avoided direct competition. It's called niche partitioning, and it's something that's actually a nice kind of ecological behavior to watch. Interestingly, though, northern Spain tells a slightly different story. So a little bit later in the Middle Pleistocene, Homotherium is hunting aurochs, bison, and Promegaceraus, which is a huge deer, basically. And it was in direct competition with its cousin, the European jaguar. So whereas in southeastern Spain, they chalk the habitat up evenly and don't come across each other, or they don't compete with each other. Here they are direct competitors in northern Spain. So that's pretty much the Homotherium in life. But as long as natural conditions are kept, apex predators can only remain on top whilst their skill set is relevant. And Homotherium's relevance eventually waned. And this is where we get into its downfall. In the long prehistory of our mammalian family tree, there appear to be two things that you absolutely must avoid as a predator trying to survive in the evolutionary gauntlet of life. And those two things are, of course, humans and cats. And Homotherium, despite being a cat itself, is no different. This is a universal law, or at least it should be. Unfortunately, Homotherium had to tolerate and survive both. So at this time, the evolution devs were in full swing, pumping out updates and patches for one of their shinier cat guilds, and that's the Pantheras. We've already alluded to one of them, the European jaguar. But this build-out did away with the fragile dental weaponry and spec'd into explosive power and brute strength. And Homotherium just couldn't keep up. It was
a tank build.
It was a tank build. It was and quite specific to its environment and its prey. And it just as I say, it got outclassed and outcompeted. And compounding this, the human guild continued to update and diversify too. Whilst Homotherium latidens was struggling to match Panthera fossilis and Homo heidelbergensis, its African cousins met Australopithecus, and its Asian cousins met Homo erectus, and its American cousins met the Paleo-Indians. So wherever the Homotherium was, there were other cats to compete with and other humans that were, coming up with all manner of other ways to either hunt the cats themselves or vastly outcompete them. I suppose that story reflects what happened to the ancestral wolf, the species that gave rise to grey wolves that we have around today and our domestic dogs. But this is not a species speaking about in the past as we have de-extinction. This isn't a species that we would be recommending for that process, because unlike cloning the mammoth and the thylacine, Homotherium's native biomes are long gone, and what kind of counterparts you can find out there today are shrinking rapidly. Additionally, unlike Britain reintroducing wolves, Homotherium's native range no longer suffers for their loss, whereas Britain and other places where wolves have gone extinct does. And both of these issues are because, unlike British wolves, mammoths, and thylacines, Homotherium was outcompeted as opposed to overhunted. So yeah, unfortunately, its natural time on this planet was well and truly naturally up. It was over. So don't expect there to be any scientific kind of debate or argument that would be pro bringing these back, no matter how much DNA we managed to find.
I think even the thought of the mammoth is a bit of a push.
It's a push, but I can still see ecological reasons to do so, for sure. I had a good conversation with someone about that the other day, but that's a story for another time. Anyway, the thing with Homotherium is more not so much de-extinction for science. It's more, wouldn't it be cool if they were naturally still around, and we naturally got to see these big cats like that. Now, the bit that I wanted to circle back to, because I was talking about Spain being important for trace fossils, is actually that the first I'll just do this real quick, wrap it up real quick. Why this species of cat is so special, or should be so special to us, and why it should be so special to other people living in Devon. And that is because the first ever fossil discovered of Homotherium latidens was unearthed in 1826 by Reverend John McHenry. He found it in Torquay, which is in South Devon. It's not all too far from where we are. The site is known as Kent's Cave. It's quite a popular tourist attraction nowadays. And the fossil that was found was that of a tooth, but it's not. Although it's unclear, it's more than likely that the cat itself didn't go in there and die or lose its tooth. What we actually think happened is it was brought into the cave by humans that were inhabiting it. So once this had been found, about 20 years later in 1846, Sir Richard Owen, of all people, was the one to give it its description. But the name that he gave it was replaced, as the animal was later named Homotherium in 1890 by Emilio Fabrini. But yeah, that's why the Homotherium is one that I like. It's why I feel it should be more important to the people of Devon. I would say that if Devon had to have a county fossil, I would argue for Homotherium.
I mean, I'd argue against you.
You'd go for ammonites or ichthyosaur, though, wouldn't you?
I mean, yes, but I'd also argue that it should be a fish as well, because we have the Devonian era.
Yes, that's true.
Which is the age of fishes.
Do you know what? Whilst I prefer,
but I would also argue
a cat,
ammonites and or ichthyosaurs, or even ammonites or ichthyosaurs.
I stand by Homotherium, but I actually think you have a really good argument for that, because Devonian, age of the fish, yeah, no, that's a good argument. Maybe I have to reconsider my position there. Yeah, but that's Homotherium latidens. That's another cat, but still not yet.
That's a nice cat.
Still not yet completed the big cats, but I've got around other.
One day we'll get there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, let's move into our email, shall we?
Let's do it.
Bing! You've got mail. Ooh, it's an email.
Right. Well, we are into our emails for this week. Last week's question we'll start things off with, which was, what desert I'd like to just put forward, because you'll see why in a second, would you most like to visit if you could? My other half has put Mars. Entire planet is a desert. I don't think it gets much more desert-like than that,
Unless you're going to Tatooine.
Until we find Tatooine, then yeah.
And then Pete Watts says cheesecake. Definitely cheesecake.
Desert, people. Desert, not dessert.
I knew that of all the two people that comment on our stuff, I knew it was
Yeah.
the two that have done it.
Oh yes, yes, they stand out as the people who are instantly seeing that and
Yeah.
going right. So, Maria Malco has put the Mojave or the Sonoran Desert. I think it would be cool to go herping and try and see chuckwallers in their natural habitat.
Oh, yeah.
That would be awesome.
Yeah.
Along with some other invertebrate species like the Aphonopelma species of tarantula. I really like them. Yeah. And then Catherine Ames has replied to that saying, same, I agree. I actually spent a night in the Mojave, but it was late when we arrived and we didn't have time to explore the next day. Those are some deserts that I didn't actually mention, but would really like to visit.
Yeah.
Is
I'd like to
those
go to the
American
Mojave.
deserts. I don't know why. The wildlife is just quite cool, I think.
The wildlife is cool. There's also like that. There's a bit of a cultural history to it as
Yeah,
well that I
there's a lot
like.
of connection to the land. Yeah.
Yeah. I think they're good choices. I get to read
You
it
get
again.
both. Yeah, you
I
get both of the really
both
funny
the-
ones.
Yeah. Steve and Eddie says trifle.
You know, do you know what? Out of the two, cheesecake, not trifle. Trifle, I think, is just wrong.
Depends on the cheesecake and depends on the trifle, but neither one of them said banoffee pie.
But that's a kind
where
of
it's at.
cheesecake, isn't it?
I suppose in a roundabout way, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, I suppose. It's cheesecake-esque.
adjacent.
Yeah. It's a cousin of the cheesecake in the
The taxonomic tree of
taxonomic
cheesecake
tree,
and
yeah.
dessert. Yeah. So Spencer Seams has put the Sahara. After seeing the movies, oh my god, not the Sahara movie with, is it Matthew McConaughey, or am I thinking of a different one?
No, he's listed the movies.
Wanderers of the Desert. Thank goodness for that. The Doves, the Lost Necklace, and the Sahara look so powerful and beautiful and intimidating. Plus, all the animals. There are like the sand cat, the fennec fox, and the Temenix lark as well. Yeah. No, am I thinking of the right film?
No, you're not.
Is
Those
that one
two
called...
films.
No. Those ones different. No.
Oh, sorry.
Is that the Flight of the Phoenix or something? There's one with
I don't
Matthew
know.
McConaughey. There's a plane. They're in the desert. I don't know. Anyway,
Does he say all right?
probably.
Yeah, no, that's I've not seen those films that he's talking about either. So
No,
I need to have a look into that.
Yeah.
We do have one YouTube comment that comes to us from Rosalie9961, who's been really nice and actually commenting on our YouTube, on all our YouTube videos lately. And Rose says, for this week's question of which desert I'd like to visit if I could, is mostly going to be the Mojave Desert. So another vote for that. In Southwest United States. I have a big love for the wildlife found in the American prairies and deserts. So I definitely enjoy a nice hike getting to see so many species of hardy plants and animals.
Yeah.
Cool. Pretty much echoing our sentiments.
Yeah. There's quite a few species from there that really fit, especially when you start tying into the prairies as well.
Yeah. I can't remember, what desert did you go for last when you asked the question? Because for me it was the Gobi, because I wanted to.
I think it was a Gobi as well. I can't remember now. But then thinking about it, you got the Atacama Desert in oh no, it was the Taklamakan Desert.
That's it,
which is similar to the Gobi Desert. I just want to go and see the ancient remnants of the Great Wall of China there, and go to the Desert of Death. You know, so that'd be cool. I think deserts themselves are interesting places.
They are fascinating.
They're not voids that people seem to think they are.
No.
But this week's question, based on the fact that we're talking about Ice Age beasts, well, we're going to put this out to you, let you all fight over which one you think is the best. What is the best ice-aged animal and why? So that's pretty much anything from the last sort of 40,000 years, realistically. So, Aaron, what are you thinking is your singular best ice-aged animal?
It's hard to choose. I think I'm just gonna have to go for the predictable one.
Is it going to be a cat?
No, mammoth.
Oh,
mammoth.
Okay.
So I like my cats and stuff, but yeah, I was finding it hard, difficult between the elephant family and the felid family. So it would have been like Machairodonts and mammoth. But I think woolly mammoth's my favorite one.
Yeah, fair enough. I'm torn. I'm in the southern hemisphere with a lot of this. I know that when you think of Ice Age animals, it's usually northern hemispheric animals. But the ones that stand out, the ones that really sort of grabbed me as a kid when it came to like seeing fossils of them and just thinking about it, was Diprotodon.
Yep.
The giant wombat, Megalania, the giant monitor lizard, and I would even say Thylaccoleo, the marsupial leopard, essentially, if you want to put it.
Yeah.
So out of those three, I think it's actually Diprotodon that wins, because Diprotodon itself was just such an absolutely bizarre size of animal, whereas you predictably would probably have a large carnivorous marsupial and you get large carnivorous reptiles. It I think pales in comparison to the thought of a large wombat, basically.
Yeah.
So mine would definitely, I think, go to Diprotodon. If not, maybe the moa.
Yeah, Mo's a good shout as well. Yeah.
So yeah. Right, well, let us know what you think is the best Ice Age animal. You can do that on our Facebook page or over on our YouTube page as well, which is increasingly becoming somewhere where people are putting those comments up as well.
Yeah.
And you can get in contact with us in a variety of different ways. If you want to send us the interesting articles for the news area, if you want to basically let us know about anything as well, you can do so by either our Facebook, our Instagram, or also on our TikTok page, where weirdly one of the older videos is getting a lot of attention at the moment. Just seems to be doing something. I don't know why.
Yeah.
It's going well. It's also where our Battle of the Animals is going quite well. That's ticking along nicely. In fact, we're over halfway now in the initial round, so we should almost be getting ready to start seeing who's going up against who in sort of the next round. That'd be interesting to see who comes out on top. And one way you can get in contact with us is through our email address, which is thenathistorykupboard@gmail.com, where you can send us all of those different bits and pieces and more, or just say hello, which is also nice as well.
We've had an odd number of emails from people.
Odd number. Can we have an even number?
Asking for us to drop them free samples of the podcast so that they can do an example edit or something for us.
The podcast is free. You can just find it on the internet. It's there.
Yeah, but it's for they're selling a business, obviously, but I don't understand it. I don't know what it is. And
well,
we like to kind of edit it our own way anyway, don't we? So
yeah. Another way that you can get involved is, other than sending us spammy emails, is through our Patreon, which let's have a look at that now.
Every week, we like to give a little love back by shouting out the names of our wonderful Patreon supporters.
That's right. These are the cupboard dwellers who are kind enough to support us through a monetary contribution, for which we are eternally grateful and grateful beyond words.
And those people are, of course, Fogtober, Jen Greenhall, Connie P, Chelsea McKee, Nick to Nick, and Matt Geddy.
Guys, your financial contributions are actively helping us out here in the Natural History Cupboard in a myriad of ways, including developing our new studio, planning excursions and being able to go out and film on location, considering technical upgrades, and actually making the jump from a solely audio-based podcast to the now growing YouTube channel. And we really can't thank you enough for that.
Now, we appreciate all of our cupboard dwellers and the support you offer us through listening, liking, sharing, and subscribing. But if you feel we've earned it and you're considering joining our Patreon, there are two options through which you can do so.
That's the Nature Nerds and the Animal Ambassador tiers, which you can find on the Patreon website or links through our social media as well. And each one having different benefits for you to enjoy.
And now back to Gareth and Erin in the studio. Thank you, recorded Erin and Gareth. And back here in the studio, we'd just like to shout out once again our latest member of the of our Patreon supporters. And that's Owen C. Hope you're enjoying it. Owen joined just in time for last week's episode, and a very welcome addition. You are. But yeah, thank you to all our patrons and all of our listeners.
Definitely.
No matter where you're from and what you do.
And that pretty much brings us to the end of this week's episode. So Big thank you, Aaron.
You're welcome. Big thank you to you too.
Well, yeah, we made it here.
We did, yeah.
The world hasn't blown up yet.
No.
Believe me, it was interesting, and I almost wanted to just dedicate the news to, well, it's all doom and gloom now, so strap yourselves in, people. Here we go.
Let's see how the dominoes form out, eh?
Well, we'll give it at least a week before
let the dust settle, and then we'll kick it back up.
Yeah. So anyway, yeah, a big thank you to you, Aaron, and a big thank you to you at home for joining us, and we'll see you next time here in the Natural History Cupboard. Bye.
Bye. So my joke for you this week, Go, is what do you call the head of a cat mafia family?
Don't know.
The Smilodon.
Oh God.
I made that up at work today.
Oh, it's good. I'll give you that. It's good.